With the first pick, the San Antonio Spurs without a doubt select Victor Wembanyama. Now, he's not as good of a shooter as advertised. He's less of a Kevin Durant and more of a Giannis type of shooter. And yes, he does have potential injury concerns, but you have to look past those if you're the Spurs. And at the end of the day, he does have the potential to become one of the greatest players of all time. With the second pick, the Charlotte Hornets select Brandon Miller. Now, ideally, they should take Scoot Henderson because he's just better. But the truth is, they're going to want to pair Brandon Miller with LaMelo Ball because he's an athletic forward. Pretty much replaces the gap that Miles Bridges left. And also, it's Michael Jordan. And even if he should draft Scoot, he's not good at drafting people. So he'll probably take Brandon Miller second overall. With the third pick, I have the Portland Trail Blazers selecting Scoot Henderson. I believe that the Dame era is over and they're going to be moving on with a dynamic point guard in Scoot Henderson. They're going to develop him and Shaedon Sharpe next to each other to create a sort of almost like a duo dynasty. They'll probably trade for another star in the future, but right now they're probably going to go into tanking mode with Scoot and Shaedon Sharpe. With the fourth pick, the Houston Rockets select Cam Whitmore. Now, this may sound crazy, and they probably should take Eamon Thompson, who at this point would be the best player available. But the thing is, I believe the Rockets are going to try and sign James Harden this offseason, and Eamon Thompson is a point guard as well. I don't think that Harden would like to come there if he had to share minutes with a young point guard. And they also have a pretty overloaded backcourt already. Cam Whitmore is a forward who they can develop. Probably going to move their roster around quite a bit if they do get Harden. And there's a possibility that they do not keep this pick. But I believe that if they do keep the pick, they'll take Cam Whitmore because of his ability to not overload Harden and increase the chances of Harden wanting to show up. The fifth pick, the Pistons select Eamon Thompson. Now, at this point, they really can't worry too much about fit, and they're just going to go best player available because at this point, Eamon Thompson is by far the best player still available to be drafted. Even though they do have Cade Cunningham as their point guard already, he's young and doesn't have like a ton of leverage on their organization, so he can't force them to make trades or anything like that to build around him. I believe they might have some kind of point guard war almost, where they try to fight for the franchise point guard position in Detroit. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out, especially with Jaden Ivey as well, because he's another one that they have, and I think there's a very good chance that at least one of them gets traded in the near future. With the sixth pick, the Orlando Magic select Jairus Walker. Now, I believe they'll select Jairus Walker because he is similar to Brandon Miller in terms of play style and build, and currently the small forward, power forward is their weakest spot, with Jonathan Isaac being injured all the time and Terrence Ross aging consistently. They're pretty stacked at the bigs and the point guard positions, so I believe that their hole that they're going to fill right now is wing, in terms of like a promising wing prospect, and they're going to continue to develop him for a long time after this. With the seventh pick, the Indiana Pacers select Taylor Hendricks, who is a defensive wing. Unlike Brandon Miller and Cam Whitmore, they're more offensive focused guys, similar to Kevin Durant type of play style, whereas Hendricks is more of a defensive wing, more similar to Jonathan Isaac, who I mentioned earlier, and he will add more depth to the Pacers' front court. I think it would be nice to see him and Halliburton paired up together, so it'll be interesting to see how that works out. I also don't think they're going to draft a guard because they already have Halliburton, and a center. This will help because he also plays the power forward position. If they do decide to trade Miles Turner, then he will help them sort of fill that hole at big. With the eighth pick, the Wizards select Anthony Black, who is going to fill their much needed point guard hole. Right now they've been starting Monte Morris, who's okay, but definitely not a high level prospect with a lot of potential. Black is that guy. Black could develop into a great point guard one day. He's great for if the Wizards do decide to go all in on developing their young players. They would probably end up trading Porzingis and Kuzma and all the other guys to try and build up around sort of a younger core. I don't know what the Wizards are going to do per se, because they are the Wizards and they should have been tanking about 2 years ago. But Washington sports are always trash. I don't know what to tell you. The ninth pick, the Jazz select Ausar Thompson, a shooting guard who will help in the backcourt pairing with guys like Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson in terms of how they would feed off of each other. I don't think Sexton is going to stay in Utah much longer. I feel like he's kind of on the trading block for them per se, and I don't think he's going to be a long-term member of their roster. I feel like Clarkson is more the guy that they're leaning to at this point. Even though he is older, he has shown flashes, because the whole team has shown flashes of being able to contend. So I believe that they'll stick with Clarkson and then potentially try to keep Tristan Thompson on the bench for now. And then in the future, they'll bring him up into more of a starter role. With the 10th pick, the Dallas Mavericks select Jordan Hawkins, who I think would be great with Luka Doncic. If they do want to try to keep Luka Doncic for sure. But right now it's not looking like that. He wants to stay. So they need to start building a better team around him fast, and they probably shouldn't be doing it with young players. But for now, this should be okay because Hawkins is a very good shooter, and I believe that pairing him with Luka Doncic will bring out the best in his offensive abilities. He does need some work on his defensive abilities, which is the Mavs' main sort of weakness right now. And if they continue to develop him properly, then he could turn into a great 3-and-D threat, which is what all contending teams need. The 11th pick, the Orlando Magic select Grady Dick, who is also a small forward, who, like I mentioned earlier, they will be trying to fill in their losses. They'll be filling in for their lack of small forward, power forward type players, their wings, if you will. And they're just, once again, filling in that hole more because they are a developing young team who could do some dangerous things in the future. But right now they're just not there yet. With the 12th pick, Oklahoma City selects Gigi Jackson, who is going to fill in their already incredibly young and talented roster at some of the holes they need in sort of like the bigger power forward type players. I do not believe they're going to keep Pokusevski much longer because they have Chet Holmgren coming back from his injuries, and Pokusevski has proven that he's good, but not the kind of young potential star that they need to continue to grow and develop, because he doesn't have the sort of elite talent written all over him. I don't believe there's much of a future for Pokusevski. And they're going to lean more in the direction of Chet Holmgren. So they're going to try to fill in with another bigger wing to pair next to him in the front court. With the 13th pick, Toronto selects Cason Wallace, who is basically going to be, I believe, their Fred VanVleet replacement. I don't think they're going to keep VanVleet much longer. I believe they're going to trade him some point soon. And Cason Wallace would be a good pairing with Scotty Barnes, potentially Pascal Siakam as well if they don't trade him, because their whole team has pretty much been in trade rumors. I'm shocked they didn't do anything at this deadline. But I believe that between VanVleet, OG Anunoby, and Pascal Siakam, at least one of them is going to be traded in the near future. So Cason Wallace would be good to help Scotty Barnes with his game as well, because Scotty Barnes kind of stuttered this year, and I believe that Wallace might help bring the best out of him. And with the 14th pick, the New Orleans Pelicans select Jalen Hood Shifino. You'll notice a trend with a lot of the prospects I have going to teams with older players. I have them replacing the older players with new, younger talents, especially the teams that should be in sort of rebuild mode. I'm replacing their older players with newer, younger, more dynamic players. And in this case, Jalen Hood Shifino is replacing CJ McCollum. He's a very good defensive guard, which is a big problem for the Pelicans right now. And I think that he will help them sort of elevate Brandon Ingram, allow him to be less stressed. Maybe they do something with Zion. I don't know what they're going to do with Zion at this point. But if he does ever decide to come back and play basketball once he feels like Zion again, Jalen Hood Shifino would be a good sort of pick and roll option if they decide to go that route with Zion. But we're just going to see what happens with them. So to save time, I have the other people right here, the rest of my draft board predictions right here. Look at it, it's beautiful. I can't see it. I'm gonna edit it and post. But yeah, here's the full draft board for the first round. Let me know if I should do a second round. Probably won't. But yeah, this is just to save time. Hope you guys enjoy my predictions. If you don't, feel free to roast me in the comments. Show up to my house with a handgun and shoot me. I do live in Texas, so that'll be okay. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. That was dumb. I don't know.